Welcome to Decentralized Dawn, where lifelong friends Chicago and Disco navigate the ever-evolving crypto landscape. With genuine curiosity and a commitment to nuance as our North Star, we offer clear-eyed exploration. Our goal? To empower listeners with the tools and insights needed to flourish in this decentralized age.
Hello, everybody.
Aloha, happy to be here. It's exciting. Hope everyone's had a good week so far, and I'm happy to kind of delve into this topic, into this show, Chicago.
I am excited to delve into this too. This is well, the more shows we do, I feel like the more we're like, let's just rip the bowling bumpers off and go freeform and just see where it takes us.
Yeah. So it's not. This is a little bit of a different sort of format. It's going to be more free flowing conversation today. But I is there anything, since we've last convened with a program, is there anything that's been, inspiring or brought some joy to your life that you'd like to kind of mention or share?
Yeah, there was a, it's funny when you listen to music and bands, Phish has always been one of my favorites. They actually played next door, literally in a living room of a fraternity house when I was in college. And so caught the tail end of them still being small. And they were one of my favorite bands through college and probably into my 20s and even 30s. But at some point, I'm not afraid to kind of move on and, taste change. And not that I don't love them, but I didn't, it's like, I think we talked about Peter Gabriel, like I didn't keep up with every modern album. And in this case, that could have been a mistake. I played golf and had a nice walk on a beautiful late warm fall day in the Chicagoland area. And we were just, the guy I was with was playing a lot of like super obscure mellow Pink Floyd stuff. And I'm like, I think it was either Echoes or one of those really mellow instrumentals, or maybe it was one off Dark Side of the Moon. I'm like, this, like sometimes I feel like this is the song that would greet me like going to heaven. And he's like, oh, no, you want to hear that song? And he played a song called Petrichor by Phish on an album called, it's something with a boat on it. I'm going to totally screw it up. But I didn't listen to newer Phish albums anymore. And it was like a 13-minute song. And it's got, it's almost like a little orchestral movement. And it was, we listened to it there. It was a beautiful song. And I just listened to it again, jogging this morning. And I'm like, oh, this is growing on me even more. So it's just a beautiful piece, and it reminds you about the better stuff in life, when a lot of things right now, it seems like, going on in the world are not so much.
Yeah. Music's a lifeboat, and music can, really kind of help everybody through different times. And it's weird. I have that thought sometimes, like too, where I'm like, which song, is going to be at my funeral, or like which song is, kind of, and different songs at different times, definitely fill that void. To answer the question myself,
I'm asking, I was going to get there. I promise.
Okay. Well, I just figured I'd move her along. We have things to get into, but, I spent, a handful of nights, in lower Manhattan last week, and it makes me wonder sometimes, is it the place or certain places that spark creativity? Like, is it the area? Like, is it just like a natural place where you're creative, or is it, kind of the coming together of people from other places to that place, or whatever it may be? But it's undeniable that, there's certain places, and I would consider, I stayed just on the edge of Chinatown at the Bowery and Canal. And, I just started thinking about, recently you had kind of the 2000 to the 2010 kind of indie sleaze movement come out of there. And you look at all those bands that made some great music, like LCD Sound System and the Strokes and the Yeah Yeahs and all that. And then you just go back, another couple of years, and then you realize, okay, that's where, almost the same area that like Television and all those guys were coming up with, kind of the post-punk movements and all that. So I just got really inspired, and it's just thinking about how, there are places that are worth kind of visiting, because they do kind of revitalize and retap, some of your creative juices. So they're very kind of, fruitful to, spend some time and just kind of absorb that energy. And hopefully I can end up, getting a little more creative from some time spent there. So we'll see.
Yeah. So it sounds like, these creative hotbeds. Yeah, I think it's definitely both. It's, I think a place certainly has a vibe of its own, but I would lean probably just like I'm like 94.6 music, the oral beats to the lyrics. Like I would say the people make the place, but the place I think carries a spirit of its own too, and in New York, there's so many people and there's so many creative people who congregate together in tight quarters, and they have to get creative with how they, their bars and their entertainment clubs and their plays and all that. Like you've got to be super creative in those tight spaces, and it creates, some of the best shows I've seen were like off Broadway stuff. In my corporate days, our headquarters used to be kind of in smack dab in Midtown, and we'd go to these plays. I couldn't tell you the name of them, but like it'd start with like you standing in a room with like cray paper above you. You're just standing as an audience, and then all of a sudden people are flying on ropes as like silhouettes above you. You're like, this is going to be interesting. So it's just so cool, and you can't describe that to anyone unless they've kind of experienced that creativity. And it makes you realize like there is way more ways than getting from point A to B with creativity, and how beautiful and crazy and windy life can be.
Yeah, but there are also places where there aren't necessarily a lot of people that once you enter them, like, and I hate to use I'll go license plate on it, but you get into certain parts of New Mexico and it is a land of enchantment. You're just like, I've never seen, felt that sort of sky, mesa, like and it's a totally different vibe, but it gives you more spatial, right? So it's kind of the antithesis to like the Lower East Side or something, where it's, crazy old and, compact and old streets and everything. And then you get to like, by Taos or somewhere like that, and you're like, dude, this is pretty magical too. So, just, when the world's tough and things can bring you down, try to find ways to look at creativity and appreciate those who have created things that are of comfort and kind of want to push the world forward, I guess would be my little soliloquy.
Yeah. And reground yourself in, whatever that means to you, whether that's urban or rural or, out in the mountains. Like, we were talking about one time we drove out to Crestone, Colorado, which is, I think it's like 3 or 4 hours south of Denver. And that drive, like sometimes you get in these plains with the mountains as the San Cristo Mountains as the backdrop, and it's so big and so grand, your jaws just open. You're like, you're driving in the same area seemingly for an entire afternoon, and you're just like a little like flea going across this massive landscape. So yeah, creativity is definitely everywhere, and it's inside, outside, all around.
Yeah. So again, we're going to do this a little bit differently. We, meaning Chicago and I, are often talking about, what do we want to do for the next show, or, what topic should we cover? And oftentimes we end up just saying, hey, that could have been a show right there. And we were, I was talking to Chicago a couple days ago, and I know we've talked about this before in a couple of the other episodes, but we entered into kind of the crypto atmosphere or crypto space at slightly different times, and that's kind of always underneath the texture of this show and the dynamic of the show. And I sometimes, specifically now, just wanted to kind of pick Chicago's brain, knowing that he's lived through a couple of cycles and has understood more than I have. I don't have that perspective. So I thought it'd be interesting, instead of it just being a conversation offline between the two of us, to kind of open it up in case there's any kind of pearls or anything that could come up that could help people that are potentially looking to get involved with, kind of becoming part of the ecosystem and understanding it. So it's not a traditional, deep dive show. It's more just kind of I don't want to say a Q&A or a lunch with somebody, but really just kind of the conversation between the two of us. And I hope that I can gain some information and some guidance on some things that I've been interested in and curious about and didn't really know where to go to ask. So
yeah, and this is a two-way street too, because I think one thing, it's not like I got in 2011 or 2012. I mean, it was 2015, early 2015. I always thought it was 14, but I looked at my first transactions and it was 15. So I have to be in that class, but it was a bear market and it was a different era, but I don't think, like, I hate it when people say like, dude, everybody here is still early, but I mean, it's in the grand scheme of things, like, it's true. You can't uninvent, cryptography. You can't uninvent the blockchain and the creativity that's going on it. They're not going anywhere. They have been, they're out there, and it's amazing. So I will also learn a ton from you. So this definitely isn't just tea with Chicago, because I have biases that, and as you go on, you pick your favorite chains, you pick your favorite, in our case, like NFT collections, and maybe this is just another phase, but you kind of concrete, or your opinions get more solidified, and that isn't always a super healthy thing. We're not one chain on this show. We're actually, at the core, probably, if it's on the crypto side, probably two chains, Ethereum and that whole ecosystem with L2s and Bitcoin. But, I think as we go on, there are probably others that, a multi-chain world is a more decentralized world. So,
Yeah.
I'm all for it, and I could learn from that too.
Let me ask you this question, which I've been wondering for a while. When you first bought Bitcoin, did you get the long code, like the password that you had to save, or like, was it at that point?
Oh man. It was through a centralized exchange.
Okay.
So yeah, so it was, I mean, it was exciting at that stage. I don't know when I put it to the hardware wallet. Obviously that's like that second step. That's such a big deal. But when I first bought it, it was Andreas Antonopoulos. I mean, that's who we all listened to. But there was also another guy that was, when it really clicked for me, and he kind of just disappeared and probably does his own thing now, and it doesn't need to be that public now because he got in so early. But his name was Trace Mayer, and he used to tell these stories about, his dad was one of those guys. He's like, I'm not giving you money for this, that, or the other. It's like, go earn it. And it was a perfect example of a guy young being an entrepreneur very early. He got it. He was a gold bug forever, but then he got into, he went back to the Swiss economists, and he learned about money, and he's the one who educated me about money. And he was the first one who said, like, I believe it was like the 7 network effects of Bitcoin. And it was just like how each one just snowballed into the next and just made it more and more, the immutability, the using it for commerce, but also using it for savings with gold. And I'm not going to do it justice at all. I probably should have looked it up here before I went on, but it, from an economic standpoint, it made me realize how, like, it scratches so many itches for society, obviously finance first, but it's so far even beyond that. We've just scratched the surface. And I know we hinted at it in our decentralization show, the history of decentralization, with education, energy. I mean, decentralization and cryptography to open things up to the people, and just for the transparency for politics, like, dare to dream. But I mean, how amazing would that be, like, to know and see the flow of where your money's spent, and then a whole generation of entrepreneurs can create dashboards like, here's where your money's going, and here's who's effective, here's who's kind of shady, and here's where money seems to be disappearing in some strange black hole. So, dare to dream. And that's, I hope in my lifetime we get far more transparent with that type of thing. But
so that was, so that kind of spirit and ethos was about, kind of pure decentralization and the excitement of transparency, and, just how that can go at that time. It was really Bitcoin, and, up to a certain point. Right. And then, was it next Ethereum that was kind of introduced to the space overall? Were those kind of the two players, and then NFTs came into play? Is that kind of the progression?
Well, it was for me, but
Yeah.
yeah. So Bitcoin, I'm really lucky because I got into Bitcoin in early 2015 was after the Mount Gox fallout. So that was the last bull. I came.
Okay.
I honestly don't even know if I came a year after that or 6 months, but whatever it was in just a crab, $200 Bitcoin. And it was just, and my brother, gotta give a shout out to him. I love him very much. He's the one who got me into Bitcoin. I think he listened to Andreas Antonopoulos. I think it was a Joe Rogan episode. And then I listened to that and it was like 3 hours and I was just like more. And I found, if you remember, you obviously know who he is, Morgan Spurlock. He's the one that did Super Size Me, who ate McDonald's for a month and then said like he was pre-diabetic, like really. But obviously, at the time, people needed to see that. And he's a charismatic guy. He did a lesser known show after that whole thing. He did a series called, I think it was called just like 30 days or something. And he would do something for 30 days. Like he had a job that was minimum wage and he had to like take the bus every day to I mean, it was a good show. I honestly don't know how he finagled crypto in there, but somehow someone got him into it. And he was really good at using animations and these visual diagrams to really make it simple. Like, here's what a blockchain is. And it just showed like almost this conveyor belt with like dollars going on there, and say like they'd lock in and you'd be like, okay, I can mentally wrap my head around that. But that combo, I'd say, of those three, and then just listening to Andreas, anything I could from him. And that's, I assume, how most of us were then. I just like, I entered the bear. So I don't even, to me, it's not like, I didn't even know I was in a bear because I just looked at it. I got very lucky because most people come in at the top. And was that skill? No, that's when I came in. It was just pure blind ass luck that my brother had heard that thing. He was intrigued. And, my brother's very tech savvy, but I'm, and I love you, bro, but I'm definitely more tech savvy. And he's introduced me with security and with he's introduced me to some of the coolest stuff. So it's neat that there are things he is way smarter, and he's got a sniffer that's very cutting edge and stuff like this. So it's just because lucky that we did it.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like people that are going to be kind of hooked on, exploring this world, it really is just a matter of when you get kind of turned on to it, and if you're the sort of person that is going to become interested, then you start going down the rabbit hole and it starts becoming very immersive. And I don't know if it's necessarily, maybe it's fate or whatever it is on when your life intersects with it. But I know that for me, I had somebody be like, oh dude, are you, crypto's crazy. And it was like, he's like, look at this. It's just always popping. He's like, it's 24/7. Like, you would totally be into it, dude. And I'm like, what's crypto? And he's like,
all the wrong reasons. He's like, dude, it's super addictive. And
he's like,
you can't lose. You're like, that right there is the red flag.
Yeah. And he's like, it's like, we're, it's like the Vanderbilt's getting the railroads for the next, and you gotta get in. And I was like, wow, how do I do it? And
he was, and he was right.
I know.
He was right probably at the wrong time, like everybody is. Like, the FOMO, the ability for FOMO to hijack our brains to get into something is so strong it's not even funny.
And it's
so when
massive.
did you so your buddy got you, and had he already been in a while, or did he just jump in at the top too?
He got in, and he got in maybe a year before me. So he already had, upside. He's like, dude, I feel like it's illegal. I can't believe I made that today. I don't know how. And I'm like, well, I want to see what this is about. And
I like money.
Yeah. So, let me move, let me, find something in the pillows and throw it into, Bitcoin.
Retirement fund.
I can get a little.
What is retirement?
Yeah. It's at 64,000. It's going to be 10 million soon. So that's a great deal. Right.
Right.
And, but I will say, I got in, I got in right when it was really frothy, and I, invested in some of the ones that were buzzy because I knew nothing, like Luna and, I got burned on that, but I consider it lessons learned. And, you look at how much people pay for business school or whatever it may be. Like, if I'm okay taking a couple hits on it, and some slaps because
Yeah.
I got the bug, and I never felt that it wasn't going to come to life. And understanding, I think I kind of had a little bit of a crutch because I was able to kind of tap into crypto Twitter, which, who says that that's such a great feeling or great thing, but it did serve a purpose to find other people to kind of say, hey, we're going to get through this, the WAGMI or whatever it may be. And it kind of felt like I was part of something. And, I had no interest in walking away. I had interest in what can I do while it's a bear, so to speak, because all the people I kind of respected and learned to respect over time in the space were like, dude, this is how it goes. It cycles, and people are kind of very not bullish on it.
Who were you talking to? Because and we'll get into this later, but my connection with people in the early days, I didn't really have, like, if I found someone to talk to about crypto, like it was during COVID, there was a guy in my town who, like, I had an old file cabinet in my office, and he and his wife picked it up, and somehow I figured out he was in crypto. And his wife was literally holding the card, like they had the thing sticking out of the trunk. I'm like, well, what about this coin? What about, I couldn't get enough of talking about, like, you and I should go on COVID walks. And I think it was almost where he was like,
enough.
I'm backing away now. So I didn't have that connection. We'll get into the NFT side of it in a bit. Well, but what made you stay?
I think that maybe it was I've always been and I know it's going to sound a little, but I've always been a lifelong learner. Like, and I always am looking for something that has meat. And what's crypto, and I guess I'll just say crypto, but what it offered me was I could finish, it's a weird metaphor, but like I could finish the book and then there'd be the sequel and I'd want to read that too. And the fact that it just kept leading to more things to understand and to learn, it was just helped me as an insatiable person, so it's like, okay, well, I think I figured that out, but oh my gosh, now I need to learn this. And that's a whole other thing. And I'll say that, some of the existing, podcasts or media platforms were helpful for me, so spending time listening and trying to learn through a bankless roll up, or at the time, listening or watching some of the Real Vision stuff. It just felt like there was enough of almost like a university, so to speak, that I could understand and learn this stuff. And it's very decentralized in my mind. When we talk about like education and decentralized education, it's like all you have to do is keep digging, and there's resources there. And when you get that kind of, it's like going to the gym and you start seeing it paying off. Like I started feeling like I was understanding things, and it made me really excited. Now I have to deal with the patient part of it, of being like, okay, everybody talks about how fun it is, or, don't just wait for the bowl. I'm like, is there going to be one? Like, I hope so.
I want my first party. Yeah, like I showed up, like you showed up at the party, and like literally like the last beer was drunk. Yes. And all of a sudden, like the sun just starts gleaming over the horizon, and then you're like, why is everybody cleaning up? What's going on?
They're sweeping up the floor. The lights are flashing. I'm like, dude, I'm in. I'm ready. So that's and that's kind of what I'd love to just kind of ask you a little bit about, because you're kind of talked about how like Bitcoin and Ethereum are kind of cores in your mind, and I don't know from a investment perspective where that is, or how you look at that. But on my side, I kind of see, I almost feel like I missed the party on those in terms of going up. So sometimes I'm more interested in some of the other things that are developing. And, but when I talk to people that have been around in the space longer, they're really seem to be very wary of, if other chains are going to make it. And I don't know if that's because there was a time like maybe in the last bear market where things went to zero and never came back, and only those did. And I'm sitting there holding some things that I got at the top, and I don't know, I have some faith in some of them are good projects that'll survive. So it just seems like it's such a different potential ecosystem in the next couple of years, and I would just love kind of your take on that.
So what do you want me to answer? What question you want me to answer first?
Do you think that if you were coming into it from my timing, that you would put your all of your weight, so to speak, towards just, Bitcoin and Ethereum, or would you be interested in, maybe looking at trying to get some NFT collections at a better entry point because of the bear market, or altcoins? If I look at it with like we talk Solana or anything like that, or Chainlink or some of those, or Uniswap, just those different kind of opportunities, it's like those haven't really run to the point that the Bitcoin and Ethereums have, that have helped people that kind of rode that ladder up. So where would you think of kind of placing some weight, so to speak, moving forward as someone who is just trying to get a foundation?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's hard because you can't unknow and unsee all that you've seen. So I know that this is going to be biased, but I guess let's look into that. Like, have I been burned on so many different tokens and NFTs? Like, yes. Yeah. Like, I've been, even if you start in a bear, and I guess this would be my third bear, but the first one I started in, like, when you start in a bear, it's not a bear to you, because if it goes from 200 to 300, you're like, that's your bull, right? So that whole ride I got to do from 15 all the way to 2017. I honestly don't even know what year. What was the first crash? Was it 17 or 8, like the beginning of 18 or something?
I think end of 17ish.
When it tanked. Okay. So that was huge. And then that first bear, that was the first one I felt. But if I guess if I gave advice, and again, I'm biased with Bitcoin and Ethereum, so someone new coming in who's never experienced this before, like, how would I help them speed run this? Yeah, I guess I would weight it heavier Bitcoin and Ethereum. If I didn't have the knowledge I had now, I know I would be looking at shitcoins, but I would want to, because I'd want that huge return, and like I would feel like I'm missing out. But I guess I feel like this next generation of people coming in, or people kind of dipping their toes a little and looking in now, I would say Ethereum, is for the most part a deflationary asset right now. It's the supply of it. It's actually going up this week, but because we're kind of a lull right now. But for the most part, it's gone down since we went to proof of stake. So I would definitely I would buy Ethereum and Bitcoin. I don't know what the ratio would be, and I would stake Ethereum, because to me, the altcoins, and I hate that term. Everybody hates that term, because there's 95% just garbage out there, or stuff. Even if it's not garbage, it's probably never going to take off. But there's probably 30, 40, 50, whatever the number is. There's a lot of interesting chains and use cases, and but I'm biased to more Ethereum L2, and to me, Ethereum, so you've got optimism, you got ZK rollups, you have so many things on Ethereum that are layered on top now. To me, I don't want to say Ethereum's only a base money, because it's so many more things than that. But to me, a depreciating asset where I can stake and have what you can call it a bond or an annuity. Yeah. And I won't say it's guaranteed, because more and more stakers are coming in now, but I've started staking more and more there. And I feel like with, everybody sees it. The next big thing is, and whether it's not approved or not, the ETFs are, at some point they have to come. They're in the rest of the world. Canada's got it. Europe's got it. We're the only ones who don't have it. And I don't think the SEC has too many arrows in the quiver for whatever reason they're stopping it to stop it. And that's probably 9 shows right there to discuss like who's behind this and why. But I think with Ethereum and Bitcoin, with the ETF, I think we already saw a surge, this week up to whatever 35 it peaked, and now it's 34 or whatever. It's hovering around there. But I think there's a ton of room to run. Remember, Ethereum's going to get an ETF too, and then people are going to be like, jump over there. So that's why I would pick those. But yeah, you're right. Like, I went through a Chainlink phase. I think I bought some, or maybe I didn't, like, because I think it was during the 2017 bull. And I'm like, but mental note, like, this could be a very important underpinning of of everything that's going on. I haven't researched in a while, so I
Yeah.
couldn't recommend or not recommend it right now. But like a lot of times what I look at is like, I'll try and dabble in altcoins, but like you mentioned Uniswap. So Uniswap is, you know, it's genius. It's a DEX. You can change Ethereum for a multitude of different tokens seamlessly, and it just works. And there's a bunch of DEXs out there that people don't talk about as much, but you know, if you buy the Uni token, you're buying kind of a governance token. Now, could they unlock that to give you a cut of those profits? No, that's we got to wait and see what happens in America with the SEC. But if that was the case, it'd be a no-brainer, right? Like that'd be another annuity you would buy to get these funds coming to you with a smart contract. It doesn't take accountants and it doesn't take a whole backroom bureaucracy to send you the funds or the assets that you gain on that, the interest.
I think it's there's kind of a theme that I've noticed in talking about this, and it's very helpful for me to understand it from this perspective, which is there are opportunities potentially to get involved with annuities and to kind of create, you know, newer style annuities with how you invest, so to speak, in some of these things, you know. And you're exactly right, you know, like staking is essentially an annuity, right? And then there's different outlets. So like for someone like me, you know, I don't have the war chest of Ethereum to like start at the level of, you know, building my own or doing my own in-home kind of node and staking from that perspective. That's right. I'd love to get there, you know, and that's something I'm hoping to do. But if I look at, you know, the central exchanges like a Coinbase to stake, or, you know, then there's, you know, the Rocket Pools and the Lidos and things like that.
Yeah. The liquidity providers, which is way more decentralized. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm curious. Like, I think I need to look at it from the perspective of how can I try to get annuities out of this and base it on the success or the utilization of different platforms or, you know, blockchain. So I think that's kind of making sense from, you know, Ethereum, and you might, you know, as long as it's deflationary and everything's going like that, then you're right. That does seem like a relatively safe bet. But then I get confused, as you were saying, about like, oh, well, you know, you have Uniswap or you have, you know, these other tokens.
Yeah, OP, there's a million.
Yeah, and it's hard to figure it out. It's like, so they're saying all these things are being built on optimism or whatever it is. Does that mean that's going to reflect in a significant rise in the token or not? You know, like that's kind of the question that I keep trying to figure out. And I guess what you're kind of indicating is, you know, kind of hedge your bets on the bigger, on the ones that are more of, you know, kind of the path is in place, and you see that, especially with the ETFs, knowing that then other people, you know, those entities are going to have to secure their own allotment of it in order to, you know, make it come to life.
Yeah. Remember too, though, like Ethereum with optimism, Ezekiel rollups, you know, those roll into Ethereum as the base layer for security, right? So to me, like if everything on top of Ethereum, you know, Coinbase's base, everything rolls down, and if you didn't have Ethereum, you couldn't have your layer 2. So for me, it's like I'm probably more conservative than most people, like in the whole NFT boom. Like, yeah, I could show you a big catalog of stupid things I bought and bought too many of, but I never overdid it and bought like 182 of these and just where you literally can't get rid of these things. But to me, Ethereum is something, there's so much infrastructure now stacked on top of it that to not stake it. And to your point, I think if I knew then what I knew now, yeah, I probably would use, I think I'd go Rocket Pool over Lido, just because Lido has like 31.6% of the entire ETH staking pool, which, you know, obviously raises alarms at the lack of decentralization there. So I would probably use someone else only if for that. But, you know, Lido's got a powerful pool, and you can stake less than 32 ETH, because
Right.
for newer people to crypto, to be a solo validator, to be a really independent validator staking the Ethereum network, you need 32 ETH, which is in today's dollars, roughly $60 or $58,000, whatever. It's not cheap. So you got to kind of be all in. But the beauty is you could stake on one of these. It's more liquid. You can get in and out at will, and you can make your 3 or 4%, and kind of build up the nest egg that way. Yeah. Is it slow? Yes. But I'm also a believer that the fundamental value of Ethereum goes up, because I'm not looking at it right now, but like OP, like I really like that, chain, that layer 2 for Ethereum, but I think there's 1 billion outstanding tokens. It's a lot. So I'm like, 1 billion's a big number, a trillion or 500 billion, some of these tokens, you're like, how, and you hear, and I'm not picking on OP specifically, but some of these chains, like the founders take like 40, 50 or 60%. Like, to me, that's a lot. Like the founding teams, to me, that's like VCs being like, oh, this is like, let's get the free money while it lasts. But obviously Polygon, OP, ZK, a lot of these layer 2s, they're awesome. And there's so much stuff being built on top of them, or what Coinbase did with Base. Like, there's so much potential there for all these layers. Like, honestly, I thought Disney, they hired a guy a couple of years ago. I think they recently fired him. And I know at some point we'll probably look into this, but I thought Disney in the NFT space, like the amount of cool stuff you can do with these immutable NFTs, or for people who are less knowledgeable, like these badges that you own, or almost think about a QR code in your phone that is yours. You own it as like a super fan or collector of Star Wars or Mandalorian, or that new one that I absolutely love. I'll think of the name of it, but you could go in and have a totally different park experience, and they could have 10,000 stormtroopers, and you could collect those. I mean, we obviously grew up as the Star Wars generation, not the Jar Jar generation, but the original, which is episode 4, 5, and 6, which I had to explain to my son the other day. He's like, "Wait, Jar Jar wasn't the first one?" I'm like, "No, it's episode 1, but it's like
you can't escape Jar Jar. It's like, come on, I'm talking like R2D2 back in the day, and the Sandman, the Sand Troopers, or the Sandmen. They scared the crap out of me. Frankly.
Disco, they're called Tusken Raiders.
There we go. There we go.
Come on.
Maybe I was giving you one there. Okay.
Yeah. Just the fact that I got to say Tusken Raider is kind of exciting.
Yeah. I remember leaving school in 5th grade to go down to see the Jedi premiere. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was 5th, wasn't it? And do you know that it was called, and the posters were out and everything in the movie theaters, it was called Revenge of the Jedi, and they changed it to Return of the Jedi because revenge was too strong of a, it was too strong of a word, and he changed it, or somebody changed it. I think he had pretty much entire creative control, so I assume it came from Lucas himself. So.
Wow. I did not know that.
Convinced him to do it. Yeah, it was literally like the posters were literally up. I don't know how they changed it in the actual movie that fast, but it was, maybe they were promoting it with posters for like a year, because how else did you do it back then? Because things stayed in theaters forever, Yeah. So that's why I'm so biased. In Bitcoin ETF, the big guys are going to come in, the Black Rocks, who manage trillions of dollars in assets, which, I mean, trillions in assets like that. The fact that a company manages something that starts with a T that's a mind-boggling number. But these guys are coming in, and they're big, and that's why you saw the big pump there. They're already starting to buy, or at least that's the speculation, right? So if they're buying, I mean, think about it. Fidelity's got to jump in. All these, there's 10 or 12 of them, I think, that hopefully all these ETFs will get approved at the same time for a Bitcoin ETF, so they have the underlying asset to the Bitcoin that, people, like what I would say to a newcomer, if you have a retirement fund, even if you put, or a pension fund or whatever, this is not financial advice, but even putting 1%, 2%, 3% in as just a hedge against, the bond market. People think that 40, 50, 60-year run is kind of run its course. Like, these to me are the new bonds, because it's code. It's not it can't be manipulated by central planning and central, the Fed
Yeah,
and the
and they
Federal
do.
Reserve.
And I did look into it. I believe they do have to have the underlying assets, so they do need to accumulate it. So I guess mathematically that does kind of make sense. Well, then, price will rise when uh, availability shrinks, right? And I understand.
Well, think about it. There's 16 million Bitcoin. Like the only analogy I can think of that fits is like, think of a tube of toothpaste that's half full, and you're trying to squeeze it out, and then take literally a steamroller. Like if you start throwing billions in all at the same time, like that squeeze and that demand on those assets. Remember, I mean, the central exchanges don't hold a majority of the Bitcoin by any means. Most of it is off the central exchanges. Yeah. So it could squeeze that, and Ethereum could squeeze, and these other coins. Like, you're right. There are coins out there, if you pick the right ones, that will probably 10, 100, 1,000 or more X. I'm just not, it's not where my interest is. And I don't know if I would be able to get it right. But if I did stumble on one that I thought was like, wow, that's like a linchpin of how everything's going down, yeah, I would definitely dabble and buy it. And then it would 100X. And I'd be like, why did I only buy like $290 of it? Like I should have put 10 grand. Yeah. Right. I mean, that's what I do with Bitcoin. I'm not super rich. I didn't buy a lot. I just had enough to play with Bitcoin and Ethereum. And it made me interested and excited to kind of have more. Like, I'm dollar cost averaging in now, just like everybody else. I'm just happy that I grabbed like a little sliver at like 29.9, 29,900 before 30, because it went to 35. Like, yeah. I'm in the same boat now, like had I bought what I bought back then and just dollar cost averaged and didn't stake, didn't do anything, I would be far wealthier now. Like, a lot of it, like, I burned on NFTs, and that may pay off in the long run. But, I don't know if we want to cross over to that yet, but the first bear market I was in from 2017 to 2019 was lonely. Like, I didn't have a lot of people to commiserate with. Now in the NFT space, and we can get in the history of how it all unfolded for me, but like, now I have people to like laugh with, commiserate with, be sarcastic with. Like, the big joke the other day at when it went to 35,000, we all woke up and saw this. Like, all of a sudden, the Twitter timeline, like, a lot of people who seem to have been elsewhere were like, "Hey, here
I never left. Like, here we are.
Yeah,
we're gonna do it. Let's go."
Yeah, and I think I was like, and to those we say welcome. And it's not like I was posting more in the bear, but you and I found this show. We found something to harness our creative energy and talk about it without just trying to tell people and pump things and try and get people like, oh, buy this, it is, or buy that. Like, we're just learning, and we're having fun along the way.
I mean, just this conversation has helped me, because I do think that it's difficult to lasso in the side of you, and I'm speaking the side of me, that wants to get the moonshot, right? And that the Twitter timeline and how that's all put together is basically they know how to the influencers know how to kind of put just a little bit out there on something that you're like, well, I don't want to miss that. That's everything's going on over there, so it's
so true.
Like, and I was thinking about that. Like, that would be so different when, if I was in 5 years ago or whatever, and it was like, you'd totally be on more of an island. And it kind of feels like the NFT, brought people together in terms of being able to, communicate and be like, hey, dude, we're in this together. And I know that's a cliche, but a sense of camaraderie, though, you know what I mean? And like-minded.
It's there for sure.
Yeah. And then it's like, now, do you think that all of the NFTs, like, do you think when the market changes or there's a bull or a new kind of thing comes about, do you think that the older NFTs are going to be irrelevant, and it's like kind of wait for a new wave of drops and stuff and do that? Or do you think that there's opportunities to kind of bargain shop some, established ones. Like that's kind of where my head's at. It's like, I don't know, do I wait until there's a new wave, or are there ones that make sense? And I guess that's a tough
I don't
question.
know if I'd wait. Yeah. I don't, again, I might be biased. Like, to me, if you look at it with like a 20 or 30 year horizon, like I don't plan, even though I would be far more well off if I had just held my Bitcoin and not bought ordinals, at least in today's dollars or Ethereum. Like, I don't regret buying them at all. And I'm glad I held them. And it's introduced me to so many new people, and I'm going to hold for decades because I like them. They're interesting to me, but I don't, you have to, that's why, and you've asked me this question a lot, and I don't know if you've noticed, and whether this is conscious or subconscious, not only have I not given you an answer, often I don't even respond to it. Not to be a jerk, but also like, you got to figure, like I will, when you're ready to pull the trigger, I will definitely be there rooting you on and like giving advice to the best of my ability, but I can't decide what community is best for you, because 95, or maybe that's high, but call it at least 50% of the people in these communities there's a lot of BS out there, and there's a lot of folks who are all about them and being influencers. And, like I said, I can't, a lot of these influencers I can't stand. Like, in the ordinal space, there's most of the people who have the biggest megaphones they don't represent my view, and I don't think they represent the view of some of the savviest collectors in the space. So I would say to you, like, I would start looking now before the next bull, because with new mints, new creative stuff's going to keep happening. But to me, like the legacy stuff, like the crypto punks or the ordinal punks on the Bitcoin side, or Bitcoin rocks. And I'm not saying you start there, because these things are several Bitcoin each, but I'm saying, I think as this ecosystem develops, and as NFTs are used for identity, for music tickets and collectibles at your favorite band and stuff, and on and on and on, and certificates that, like we're waiting for the course we took in NFTs and the metaverse. Like, I think a lot of the coolest stuff is already out there, but you have to figure out what kind of collector you are. Like, we've gone through a lot of it. We've talked about Ethereum NFTs. A lot of them are pointers and off chain, but there's a story element to that Brendan taught us, right? Like with a lot of collections, like it's not that totally off chain, even off chain centralized. It's not bad. It's just not my preference anymore, because 10, 20, 30 years down the line, like, I know I pick on DGods a lot, but is that DGod going to be there in 20 or 30 years? Like, maybe. I don't know. That to me, that seems doubtful.
Let me ask you this then, because I know I've tried to ask you a few times, and now it's been exposed that I'm not getting the answer that I seek. Let me ask you this: how would how did Chicago go about getting the feel for a community before you pulled the trigger? So before you entered into the CryptoPunk space, how did you research or understand that was a community that you wanted to be a part of when you were on the outside prior?
Good question. My first mint was, I never paid attention to NFTs. I was more into DeFi and really just into Ethereum and Bitcoin. But then, I started listening to Bankless more. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. You can do stuff with Ethereum. And then I started learning how Ethereum actually worked. I held it for years, and I'm like, I didn't realize that I wasn't a Bitcoin maxi, but I was just like, Bitcoin's awesome, and Ethereum's like this other thing that they're playing with the sandbox. And I think it'll do well. And Andreas told me it'll probably work. So I did it, but my first mint was Nuclear Nerds, and I literally saw one of the founders post a joke, and it was funny. It was like there was this whole thing where like Pepsi Budweiser and two or three other big brands, there was something that was referenced to Web3, and the dialogue between these three was literally like 8 seconds apart. So it was like the same PR firm organizing this. The companies are probably like, whatever, yeah, Web3, just go do it. And they were like, hey, wag me. We're all going to make it. GM. And it was like the most cliche stuff. And the Nuclear Nerd founder just said cringe 3.0. And I was like, and as my dad would say, like, mwah. Touche. It was perfect. Yeah. It was absolutely like he said in the least amount of characters, like, get out of this space, and Bud Light put the Noggles in the Super Bowl. So like they've got a legitimate, like that's more OG than I was. Like I wasn't into the nouns yet. I wasn't following yet. So, okay. It's all relative. And then I started scrolling the Nuclear Nerd timeline, and I just like, I don't know why. That's when my brain got hijacked and I got hooked. And, I won't get into the whole story, but I made a lot of friends there. I bought a lot of art from a lot of the people who were Nuclear Nerds holders were artists and creatives. And they were just like that gave them the permission, and I put that in quotes because obviously they didn't need permission, but it gave them the permission to be, the license to be creative again and to really, and this one guy, Coe, did these beautiful SOAR graffiti, and oh man, Lanko has some beautiful pictures. I've got a couple behind me. Maybe when you're talking, I'll go back and scroll a couple, but there's so many Max up in Tromsko, who does these beautiful tours of the up in the sky of the, what do you call them?
Northern Lights.
Northern Lights. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
And I have a picture of a old broken down ship that's with the Northern Lights in the background. So like I got to know these people, and it made me realize, my mom was an art historian her whole life, and it made me realize how much I love art, but I like to know the people behind the art that I buy, and that made it more accessible. And I became friends with these people online. Now, I will finish by saying I'm definitely disappointed in how the Nuclear Nerds that drop. I mean, the market was tanking this spring anyway, but they did a drop and like tripled or quadrupled the count. They didn't even mint out, and it was such an obvious complete fail. But since then I got into Zuki and met so many great people there. And then, that was kind of my community. I've never been in the center of the community because like, with families, you can't be on Twitter all the time. Like you have to pick your times to be on it. But there's a lot of people I really liked there. And to this day, there's a lot of people that I really like. And then, the more you get into it, I think the more you look back at the history of it. And that's when I saw CryptoPunk. And, now that I guess my face is doxed, I'm like, hey, that's me. Wait, but that's listed way above floor. That's like almost double the floor. Wow. And like hijacked brains like, I can make this work.
There it goes again.
Somehow.
It comes again.
And I got hijacked. And a lot of the Bitcoin I held early, I transferred over to Ethereum that's not the only thing I did. I had some wins with the Zuki, but that's how I got my CryptoPunk, by old Bitcoin and then paying the tax man a hefty sum of once, if you go from one coin to the other, you pay capital gains on what you bought it for. But, I was like, I want to spend it on things that are interesting to me.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating because before I even thought about before I heard the Vanderbilts were building, and to jump in, I was going to switch my job, and my goal was to open an art gallery, and a traditional art gallery. Like that was in my mind. And then it's just kind of congruent in an interesting way that, there's this transition to digital art, which, I just haven't, I think because I've done a lot of, I take the leap on traditional art without any issue. You know what I mean? Like if I see something and, I understand it, like I'll invest and purchase it because I know, and I've never regretted it, because every time I walk by it each day, I feel a little lift from it, and it gives me that. And I think that I've been a little reluctant to make the transition in my mind of accepting art as art, whether it's, traditional or it's digital. And I think that's kind of something that I'm getting closer to making that transition. And it's something I think about, and I think we talked about this briefly, but I think I'm waiting to have like a true opportunity for a good gallery, digitally, like, and try to make that come to life. And I'm trying to learn more about who's building that sort of stuff. And I'm very excited about how that's going to come. And I know I'm not Mark Zuckerberg or anything, but I do think that it's tied to kind of this notion of the metaverse, which, when I got into, at the frothy, whatever, that was also, I think I heard about crypto the day I heard that they were changing the name from Facebook to Meta. So that was when it was like, whoa, this is all happening. Like, Facebook's changing. And then my mind was just blown. Like, where is all this going to end up? And where's this going to go? And I need to get a seat at this table. Like, I love it. So I appreciate the context. And it's just helpful to talk to, have a conversation with someone who's had a little more, miles on the tires, so to speak, and has seen it. And I think what I'm getting from you is, be wary of FOMO, look for, quality. And if you talk about Ethereum, I don't know why I haven't really registered it. Like, Ethereum, all ships rise if the L2s do great. Like, Ethereum's rooting for everything to go. So there's no like, hey, you got to like side hedge as much as I thought before. Like, oh, I got to get out
the
on
more
these
activity on that chain, the more Ethereum at the base layer settles it. The more activity, the more ETH that gets burned, and the more staking rewards you get. It's like, it's the perfect flywheel,
Yeah.
But I will answer you directly in one sense. Like, if I was starting over right now and I didn't know anything, and someone gave, like, a big brother gave me like perfect advice, I like, and you wanted to get in with an NFT, just like a smaller sized one, I would say MFers. I love, like, it's CCO. I think CCO is a very interesting way to have art. Like, basically you're saying this art can be reproduced. It can be used in any way by any person, whether you own the NFT or not. Like, I just think that, to me, stands the test of time. But if you look at the bear market, whether we're coming out of the bear or not now, I have no idea, but art has done better than the NFT collections by far. Like, some of the older art has held well. Now, obviously when you're in this community, you kind of want to have a PFP, because, like, having a face for whatever reason, whatever that thing, that character, whether it's a crypto punk or one of Matt Fury, the guy who made Pepe, one of his weird, awesome creations. Like, I don't know. I don't know if it matters, but I think that there's a lot of communities out there that you would definitely vibe with, and there might be something new that's groundbreaking. But if you're waiting for the next bull, I mean, you see the trap you're putting yourself in. You're waiting for the next bull, and then all the grifters come out with these mints, and a lot of honest people. Like, are you going to be able to discern the difference? Because when your brain gets hijacked, that FOMO is so strong, and it doesn't matter how many cycles you've been in. Like, I get hooked all the time. There was one the other day. I was like, wait, this is a nice new take on Ethereum by being able to change your PFP and changing the pointer. It's a clever idea. Did I mint? No, it was yesterday. I forgot. But I'm like, you got to ask yourself the question, like, in a year when the lights are not shining on that thing at launch, like, could you buy it then? Yeah. Like, is it gonna keep 10xing? Probably not. Some might, like Azuki kept going up, but then even that came down. Yeah. So, like, everything has its day in the sun.
I agree with that. And
you got to find something that you really want, and whether that's art for a while, I mean, it could be that, or like, I don't know. That's why, like, the MFers, that's what I would personally buy. I'm trying to think, maybe one of Matt Fury's, I can't remember the collection, but they're the goofiest. They almost look like the Sesame Street of the LSD era. Like, they're just weird, but they're awesome. So maybe one of his things, but those might be in the ETH or a couple of ETH, but there's so much cool shit out there that, you just gotta pick the things that you want.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And even just listening to you answer that, I was like waiting for the next thing. What's going to come? It's like we already did a show on one of those, and ordinals are however many months old, and that's come in, and I'm a little mesmerized by the whole. Kind of some of the benefits or the differentiators of the ordinal side of things in terms of the inscription numbers and the chess versus checkers, and kind of looking at it that way,
Yeah.
that maybe that's what'll happen. But I don't know, I really appreciate just being able to have kind of some open questions, and just a little bit of it just kind of helps to pace me a little bit when I'm sitting down in my little office and looking at things and seeing charts, and hey, this is going to moon, and this is going to go, and this is going to zero, and what is it? I don't know. And it's kind of comforting to know that people who have been around and in it a little longer still have to be disciplined, and play by the same rules of really watching out for the FOMO, like, and understanding how your mind triggers your potential actions. And I think it's a great point. Very few times have things launched and there not been another entry point. So it kind of defeats
Yeah.
the purpose of FOMO, or defeats the foundations of FOMO. So I think that, if there's one lesson that I'm picking up, it's like, stick with things that can build upon themselves and can generate a return. Don't be, looking for things that are too good to be true, aka what I had going with like Terra and Luna when I got out. I was like, it just keeps going up. I don't know what it does, but it keeps going up. And
Yeah. The thing that stinks for new people is like, if they do get into Luna and get into these crappy coins that were, not that I could have told you then, like, is it a scam? I would have told you to stay away from it, but right. like SBF, I didn't pay enough attention to him because, I'd been around long enough. I'm like the grifters, it's just like the phone, I don't want to say the cream rises, because that's a compliment, but like it's almost like the FOMO grift rises and then they get scraped off. Like that didn't even remotely surprise me. And I think most people in the business be like, I'm not giving this glitzy new SBF my money. Like when I had, when the Thanksgiving conversations come around and people were like, where should I buy? Like FTX has all these Tom Brady commercials. Should I buy there? I'm like, I wouldn't. I'm like, yeah. I'd use Coinbase because that's the one I know. They've been around longer, and they haven't done everything right, but security is important. I would say them or Kraken are safe places to do it. And I think Coinbase is around a little earlier, and that's when I started buying there. So it's like in the FTX, thank goodness, I think I even told my cousin or one of my brother-in-laws, like, yeah, I would just stay away from that. And even when it went down, I'm like, wait, I told you not to use that, right? He was like, oh yeah. I'm like, okay, good. I'm like, just get a hardware wallet if you can. Like, I wouldn't keep it on any central exchange right now, because who knows if Coinbase could fall. But obviously they didn't, and they were fine. But
yeah.
I don't ever want to give someone like the wrong advice. But I would ask you and turn around, like, for someone new to crypto, what would you like? If we see any ETFs approved, obviously, but this fall, under the hood, a lot of these massive funds like BlackRock are accumulating Bitcoin, and all crypto is going to rise, obviously. What advice would you give a new person coming in?
I think I said it before. I think my biggest takeaway is operate with an element of discipline, and don't just look for, it's like, the gambling sites, you can do the, hey, open a DraftKings account and put $100 in and we'll give you 300 in free bets. They know right. They're going to get it back, and they'll push like parlays on you. So I'll almost equate some of these to, yeah, it'd be great to do a parlay, but you got to get all three things right to get the payout on that. So kind of looking at it from that lens, and then going into, hold something, and taking the notion that, and it's cliche, we mentioned it before, that it is still so early, so buying, Ethereum now, you're still kind of way ahead of the general population, and you didn't really miss everything. You missed the couple innings beforehand, but that doesn't mean that you can't, do well and be a part of something that may be more stable. And I think the notion of the deflationary and the limited supply versus, seeing token airdrops, every so often from some of these other places where it's like, hey, it's like, well, that's going to devalue what I have. It's
Yeah.
kind of the same thing with the NFTs, dropping, collections within it and diluting going from 10,000 to 30,000. It's like, well, great. So it's kind of the same way to look at that, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point. And remember, like during COVID, Bitcoin went, I don't remember what it was before that. I know it was at 68 at some point, but it went from like 20, and for a couple days it went to like $4,000. And I was like, oh, I'm in, like I'll gobble in. So the longer you're in, the more you realize, like, and I still FOMO and make big mistakes, but you realize, like, just be patient, but if you're getting in for the first time, like, and it's going up, just buy a little, like, just start dollar cost averaging in, never put in more than you can afford to lose. I feel like this is the end credits right now, but just get in so you can understand what's going on. Because if you have it, then you might get a hardware wallet, and then you might transfer it away from a centralized exchange and realize, like, you literally have just become your own bank. And there's nothing more freeing and invigorating than knowing that you hold the private keys to your own bank and to your own Ethereum or Bitcoin or whatever it is.
That being said, there's nothing that I've experienced that was scarier than the where is it of transferring for the first time from a exchange to a wallet. Like, what happened? It's like, and as you say, like doing that by yourself, it's almost a rite of passage. And once you do it, then the light bulb also goes off. It's like, oh wow, this is how it works. So yeah, having that, and having that, kind of that safe in your hand is pretty liberating when you really think about things. So I think we could go for hours and hours, but I've picked up a lot from this, and it really was kind of a steady me down a little bit. And I think it was timely because, as you said, like the timeline's starting to pop and you're starting to see, big words and big companies and billions and trillions of assets coming in. And, it's easy to get kind of hyped up and hopped up. And I think just having some anchoring and really understanding what sort of, collector or investor, however, what you want to be, and just kind of holding yourself accountable is pretty much the key takeaway that I'll take.
Yeah. And the best part about it is, honestly, to me, looking back, the learning, whether it was crypto or NFTs or just security, without cryptography, we wouldn't have like online banking. We wouldn't have e-commerce. Like it's everywhere. It's just, this is the next iteration to streamline and make more transparent and immutable, meaning can't be changed. It's locked in, that everyone, can see. It's just, this is an evolution of what we've already had. And, we'll throw Phil Zimmerman out again. Like, what an amazing guy you've never heard of. Like, had he not kind of fought the government and made cryptography legal, we wouldn't have any of this stuff. So it's a cool thing. And I love learning is the best part of all of this by far.
I know. And it's kind of what I was saying, where it's like, I'd rather have this education and, have to, take a couple slings here and there or whatever, but to be able to learn what I've learned and to be able to be as fulfilled from a just kind of exponential thought process of like, hey, and the wonder of what can be and where it's headed is like, for that I'm thankful for getting hyped into it at the top of the froth, and I'll be patient and see where things head.
Absolutely.
Again, as always, this show is for entertainment purposes only. It is not financial advice. As you can hear us say, it's important always to do your own research and to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and not getting over your skis, so to speak. So be careful out there, be smart, and have as much fun as you can. I'll say that.
Yep. Take care, everybody. Right. Until next week.
All right.